Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out and hearing the big news tonight. It's certainly not meant to be overly dramatic or such, but obviously it's been quite a process this summer for us to get to the point where we can confidently announce our plans so that all of us can make those plans for the beginning of the school year. Before we get started, I want to just do a couple acknowledgments. I've had a task force made up of community, staff, and administration that's met throughout the summer and put a lot of hours and research and helped me make the decisions necessary for the beginning of school. So I do appreciate their efforts. I'm noticing a great cross-section tonight of teaching staff, including our new second grade teacher, Darby Miller, is in the house. And but also some new families who I've had the opportunity to speak to on the phone over the last week as they join our Gold Beach community and look forward to having their kids in our schools. We're going to add a couple more here in the room. So that I can concentrate specifically on the presentation. Mr. Metzger, our high school principal, will be my producer in the booth, and he will be addressing the chat room and allowing other people to come into the meeting tonight. So again, just as a reminder of courtesy, we are recording this meeting so people can watch it beyond tonight. It'll be posted on Curry County Voices. It's a YouTube channel, currycountyvoices.com. Probably by the end of the week, the recording will be up. Or if you want it specifically and quicker than that, you can email me and I can send you the MP4 link via OneDrive. Also, the chat room is going to be watched for questions. Please be respectful to everyone who's present in that sense. It's probably a foregone conclusion that we know that the process to get to here is something that in my 40 years of education and teaching never thought would come across my plate of responsibility, nor did we feel or ever experience this pandemic, its impact on our families, our communities, our country, and world, without getting, too emotional. But it's also fair to say that our community represents, I believe, the feelings of all communities across our state and region, where we have many people who are ready for their kids to go back to school and whatever it takes. And we also respect those who still have concerns about personal safety and hygiene and all those other things that come into the decision of coming back to school. So know that we have taken into account all of those reactions, and we know that we will not be able to please everyone. But I believe what I'm going to share tonight is not only required, but also has the flexibility of knowing that we all share the intent that we want what's best for our kids. And in my opinion, the best for our kids is to be at school with their teachers. So that's our overall goal. We will take different paths to get there. And so I'm going to switch over to Mr. Metzger, who's going to join us here, and we're going to share a screen to go to the presentation. I will let you know that the announcement will be within the first couple of slides, and so if that's all you're on for, you're welcome to say, okay, that's that. But I do encourage you to stick around no more than a half hour to go through the information. And again, as always, if at the end you have questions after the meeting, don't hesitate to reach out and call me or email me. We will be sending a summary to all families by the end of the week for those who weren't able to attend tonight. There will also be a summary statement on our social media pages, Friends of Riley Creek, Gold Beach High School Panther Pride and in the district Facebook page. All right, without further ado, Josh, if you want to take the spot over here and we'll start sharing the screen, and here we go. All right, I think it looks good. Can we have some thumbs up if you can hear my voice okay? Okay, thanks, Darby. All right, so as always, our guidance around the reopening of schools started back in June, and throughout the summer, we've received updates every 2 to 3 weeks, with the most recent update being at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And with that much information, it's fair to say there is still a lot to do, even after we've made this decision tonight. Next slide. Oops. So tonight, our quick agenda, I'll be making the announcement of how we're going to open our schools, what school will look like, what the support and next steps will be. And this is the first public announcement, pending board approval next week, but I've got an okay to announce this, that we'll be delaying to have the first day of school be Monday, September 14th. This will allow our staff to have an extra week of training in tools of technology. Okay, Josh is getting things.
Sorry, I was getting arranged.
There we go. We're still getting some people in.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next slide. And I want to thank Friend for sending this to me about an hour ago. The school superintendent said something profound in his address, canceling school for the next 3 weeks. In the end, it will be impossible to know if we overreacted or did too much, but it will be quite apparent if we underreacted or did too little. So with this, hopefully a sense of patience and sense of grace that I am the messenger. I take that responsibility. But the message has come through a lot of research and counseling with groups, and now we're ready to go to announce. Oh, one more, penultimate. Oops, go back. Sorry. So this will be the only slide as a repeated slide. These are the 3 options that we have, starting on the left with all kids coming to school in person. The hybrid is a combination of kids coming to school part-time and having online for part-time. And then the third one is comprehensive distance learning, also called CDL. And now we can say, here's the announcement: school will begin with distance learning, okay, or CDL. This is really a decision that is out of our local hands. I don't want to get into all of the mechanics of the matrix. Hopefully you've seen some of this on the news. Can you pull that to the side? There we go. But in essence, each county has a set of metrics that are based on the number of cases that are reported in a county and the number of positives. And that metric is put out weekly. We know that in Curry County, we have one of the lowest rates throughout the state. However, in order for us to consider opening our doors, the state must also meet a certain metric, and that's what I want you to kind of remember and keep this number in your head as you're following us moving forward. is that it's the state has to have a 5% or less positivity rate over 3 consecutive weeks. Okay, so if the state meets its metric, more than likely Curry County, in showing its past history of the past 5 weeks, will also meet. If those 2 metrics are aligned, then we can consider opening schools. But until the state metric essentially meets, then we cannot. Just in the recent 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the state's gone from 5.8 to 6.1 to 5.4. So you can see it's kind of going up and down. So your takeaway on following where we go next is watching that state metric as a 5. Those rates come out on Monday nights or Tuesday mornings, so we get it every week. Okay. So that means that all grade levels will be in CDL, or comprehensive distance learning, for 6 weeks. I've picked that day because it's the end of the first grading period. And by then, we should have a good sense of where our metrics for August and September are, and could predict when school could begin again. So what I'm sharing tonight is, if the required metrics are met, then we would plan to resume school on November the 2nd in the buildings. Okay. Now I underline the word could, because there might be some considerations that would alter that date. Either we need to extend it or potentially go earlier. But I want to commit for your planning right now that we'll be in CDL for 6 weeks. The current data for the county, the last week was 0. The week before that was 0. The week before that was 13.4. And again, I don't want to get too deep into the numbers, but I will respond to the person who asked the question, Bree, and get you that specific information. Okay, so first 6 weeks, we're in CDL starting on September 14th, into the first quarter, October 30th, with the planned start date back at school November 2nd if everything aligns. However, ... meaning that we just got new guidance yesterday. Okay. This is another dramatic pause here. Sorry. There are some exceptions to the metrics that I just shared that may allow students to return to school earlier than November 2nd. Okay, next. Now what I'm trying, so these are the exceptions, and what I'm trying to do, go ahead, is not have you hanging any more than I have to, because there are some considerable things that have to occur for us to meet those exceptions. Again, those exceptions are based on the county and state metrics, and we also have to consult with our Curry County Public Health Administrator. But the key part around being a part of the exceptions are the cohort size, and we've talked about that earlier in the summer. Essentially, the requirements have us limit the number of contacts that a kid would have at school. So if you will, think about this in the simplest form. At Riley Creek, the K2 wing is a cohort. It has approximately 80 kids. The 3, 4, 5 wing at Riley Creek would be a cohort. The middle school would be a cohort. The 9th and 10th graders at the high school would be a cohort. So within those cohort rules, we have to limit the number of contacts as best we can. So just a little bit more on the cohort. And so in keeping those groups of kids together, as an example, primary would all have their recess at the same time. They would have lunch at the same time. They would all use the same restrooms. Whereas the 3rd through 5th graders would have a different recess time, use different restrooms, and use the cafeteria at different times. So it's, again, the idea of minimizing the groups at school. Kristen, the preschool has to follow the same rules as in the guidance, as far as cohort sizes and so on. And
Ivan had a question about our parents being supplied with laptops and supplies to help them consider everything we need for this.
We're going to talk about what we're offering later in the presentation, Ivan. Okay, good question. Okay, so those are the things we have to work through in order for us to consider people coming back to school. The first group that we would consider coming back are the kindergarten through 3rd graders. That is the group that we would all agree needs the most direct contact with teachers as far as their literacy and numeracy skills and their reliance on the teachers to have face-to-face. Whereas the kids get a little bit older, they develop those reading skills and are usually more independent as far as trying to do the online work the older they get. Because of those cohorts sizes that are required, what we would look at in that initial return would be a hybrid or blended model, because the cohort size would not allow everyone to be on it at the same time. Again, I'll explain that a little bit more in a couple of slides. So I want to talk a little bit about what comprehensive distance learning is. Again, short version, we'll call it CDL, not to be confused with commercial driver's license or California driver's license. But we learned a lot last spring about distance learning for all. Credit to our teachers for essentially within a weekend having to put together a learning platform when most teachers didn't have that type of experience. They've all recognized that teaching in a virtual world is different than teaching live in your classroom. It's a different level of planning. It's a different level of knowing you're not having that face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with your kids. And we also recognize that our families also had good and bad experiences with distance learning for all. Sometimes there were too many calls from the school to check on people, and then unfortunately there were reports of parents and kids never hearing from their teachers. And so a lot with that, along with some technology issues, we've learned a lot. So those lessons will be have been addressed, and I'm going to share with those here in a little bit. At the same time, the Oregon Department of Education has also made requirements because they saw the same conversations across the state as we were having locally. So when CDL opens on September 14th, you should expect 2.5 to 3 hours of live teaching with your teacher per day. Okay, where as opposed to just putting up YouTube videos and say, do this worksheet, there'll be actually what's called synchronous learning. That idea that the teachers will be working with their students live. They will have interaction with their kids. They'll have discussion groups. So it will feel more like a regular class in session. Depending on the grade level, that could be morning or afternoon. So the other half of the day, teachers would be working with some applied learning activities, or maybe have small group instruction. They may break down a reading group to do a specific intervention, or students in special education or second language may have some additional work that's maybe not in their regular core classes. as opposed to the spring where kids were graded pass fail or did work and didn't get any feedback. All of the work now is graded. As you're planning your time, plan for 4 to 4.5 days a week. Essentially, it'll be a 4-day school week, but that 5th day could be some small group or opportunities. Teachers would have office hours so that you could be contacting them on a regular basis. The other thing that ODE has required is that we as the district have to provide student devices and internet connectivity. It's our responsibility to make that occur. And I'll show a little bit more details in a second on what that looks like. That's a pretty big project within itself. It's not going to be the same for everybody. We all know our pockets of neighborhoods in the district that have little or no cell or internet services available. And so we have to be creative on how that services is made available.
So you had a couple of questions here, Tim.
Okay.
Tim, can you clarify that synchronous learning will not be all face-to-face online?
Yes, I can. So Ms. Van Hall is asking the question. If you're as a first grade teacher, we've talked with the idea that it's difficult to keep a kindergarten through 3rd grade student in front of a screen for all 3 straight hours. So it's essentially a 3-hour learning block where there would be some direct instruction. Then there may be, okay, everybody go run around the house 3 times, take a fresh air break, and then come back and do another activity. Those are examples, or the teacher might show a film or something during her live time or his live time as a teacher, but then there would be, it would be immediately followed by discussion and interaction for kids.
So does that involve small group Zoom meetings or whole class from Darby Miller?
These are primarily done as your schedule is determined by your principal. So generally speaking, the meetings would be Zoom type. We're actually going to be moving over to Microsoft Teams as our main platform. And so students would get their lessons and appointments, if you will, on a regular schedule where kids would sign in to see their class or their small group, depending on how you've determined that.
Ms. Tuttle, when you say K through will be considered first to go back to school, is that still only after November 2nd?
It's possible that we could do it earlier than November 2nd, but I didn't want to promise that and not be able to back it up. So I'm going to say November 2nd, but it could be earlier. And I apologize, I can't be more firm than that. I can't confirm a date that I can faithfully make sure we have everything ready, but that is definitely our main priority, is to get kids back as soon as possible.
And then what will happen with kids that have an IEP class? Will there be some sort of way out?
Yes, the question about students with special needs that have IEPs, all of those IEPs are in effect. And so not only will there be push-in instruction in the regular class, but your special education teacher will also be setting up extra other times besides that to provide direct support. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. These are great questions. I appreciate them. Some more of what school will look like. There will be a regular schedule. And so as an example, if you're a high school student, your first 3 periods might be at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock on Mondays and Wednesdays. And you would be expected to attend those 3 periods, first, second, and third period. Or in 5th grade, your teacher will say, we're going to have class every day from 12 to 1:30. And so you can, that schedule will be something that we stick to as much as we can, so that you all can do your planning as well. In the event that we know there are many families that have both parents or guardians not able to be at home during the day, we would be recording classes each time it goes on, in case you wanted to watch it later, or your children needed you wanted to help them. That would be a link that would be available later in the evening and in archive. One of the big complaints we had last year was that we had too many different kind of platforms, or too many different types of passwords, too many pathways to get to a lesson. And so we have standardized the kindergarten through 5th grade using a certain platform, and then the secondary, or 6 through 12, middle, high school, will also use a learning platform. So basically you're going to have one sign-in to access your lessons. With that, every student, even the kindergartners, will be assigned a school email account. So that would be their access to their schoolwork and their lessons. Okay. And finally, heard this loud and clear in our feedback, that there will be both parent and student training on all of these tools before we begin instruction. And we will be in a Microsoft venue. So all the kids essentially will get their emails. It'll be a ccsd.k12.or.us email. And it would be the expectation that all work that is requested and turned in will be through that email system. Okay, let's go on to the next slide.
We're doing rollouts and training materials.
Yeah. I'm going to ask right now, because a lot of these questions are coming from teachers, if you could wait on some of those more specific, because the general public probably doesn't want to hear about our internal stuff. So either hold those questions to the very end, or Josh will just ask that we kind of keep the comments more general. Here's how we are committed to helping everyone through this comprehensive distance learning, that we would loan you a laptop or a device for those families who request them. We are in the position of providing hotspots. If you live in an area that has cell service, but maybe not internet connection, the cell service would help you get connected in that way. We recognize that there are some locations in our district that you're going to have to go someplace else to access the internet. And so those might include the parking lots of our 2 schools and the library. We also have some significant planning going on within our community that would take on some child care / student care / places where kids could go and have supervision and internet access. We're working on sites in Nasika and Pistol River, and then one here in town. And once those are more confirmed, I'll be able to share that. And then there is the possibility that we can bring small groups of students to school during this time. And I'll just share a couple examples. They might be students whose special education plans are more necessary than what's represented in the regular classroom. Another example might be if you're in Mr. Becker's metals class and you're taking metals and you've been doing all the theory of welding, by book, but you've never held a piece of a welder in your hand, that small groups of kids would come in and have that experience on an irregular basis. Okay, I can get into that a little bit more later as well. So I'll stop right there real quick. If you have any families, if you have any questions specifically about the CDL. Okay, if those come to you later, please don't hesitate to put them in. I'm going to switch gears now to the hybrid model. So as we talked about earlier in the summer, our primary goal initially was having every student return every day. And to be in line with the metrics and also the cohort size, that's essentially down to 50 kids in a cohort. And in order for that to happen in our schools, more than likely means we go into what's called a hybrid or a blended model. In that model, a student would come to school for 2 whole days a week and then would be home 3 days a week. And I'll use, because I see Miss Miller's picture in front of me here, I'll use her as an example. Smile. Half of her second grade class would be with her in her classroom, while the other half of her class is at home doing an assignment that Miss Miller has assigned. And then 2 days later, Miss Miller sees the group that was at home for 2 days, and the first group is at home. The 5th day of the week, because this is a significant load on our teachers, is trying to plan for in-person and online at the same time. So that 5th day, if you will, to determine what that day would be, we don't know yet, would be a day where they would be doing extra planning. It's also a day that we would do significantly deeper cleaning, knowing that we've had 150 kids in the building, and then we spend a day to do a major cleaning, and then know that a next group, another 150 come in the next day. I'm talking at Riley Creek in this situation. And so it gives time for a deeper cleaning. It would also give more time we would adjust the daily schedule that would allow kids who are home that day to have a contact with the teacher even on the day that they are at home. Okay, kind of mini office hours at the end of each school day. So the advantages of that would be, we know with best intentions last spring that some kids did fine in distance learning, but a lot of kids, their skills have regressed. And so by having smaller classes of 9 or 10 classes, we certainly would see more time for individual instruction, but also time to potentially accelerate. We also know one of the downsides of this is we may not get through as much material if this were to go on for the whole year. Let's knock on wood that doesn't happen, but that is an advantage. The other part about having the smaller groups is that things like going to recess and going to the cafeteria would feel more normal because only half of the school is there at one time. We fully recognize that this has been a conversation since day one, that childcare is a significant issue when we start having your kids come to school for 2 days a week and then off 3 days. We would align, if possible, older sibling schedules so that if you had older children and responsible for youngers during the day, that we would have them go to school on the same day. So that would be a possible help with that. Other than that, we're working with a couple community partners trying to still try to find essentially K2 childcare opportunities. This also might be a time that you start talking with your neighbors and your friends and possibly organizing little mini pods where I know it sounds counterintuitive to having social distancing, but if you had a couple small groups where someone can supervise some online learning and to help out with the childcare, that's the intent there. Okay. So these are just two examples. This was on our survey we sent out in the last couple weeks. This one was by far the more popular choice. The idea that group one, as I explained a moment ago, would come to school on Monday and Tuesday. The other group would come on Thursdays and Fridays. And Wednesday would be the day that no one's at school, so we can do the deep cleaning and so on. The other model, it's the next slide, was the idea of having school 4 days a week, and we would have a morning group that would come to school for a half day and an afternoon group that would come for a half day. This one was less popular, but it's one we still may consider once we get our teachers back in the building and we can have some more informed conversations around that. Okay. So in conclusion, you should be getting a school letter in the next week or so. It's that usual back to school letter. One of the changes we're making this year related to our office and access and so on is we are going to do our traditional registration online. We're working with a new vendor and we're in the last stages of confirming that. So when that letter comes out, there'll be some new instructions on how to access and review all those forms and update your emergency contacts. All those types of things will now all be done online. We will also send out a school supply list. This is a very popular item this time of year. But knowing that we're going to start the year in distance learning, we should also kind of plan that you are going to come back to school at some point. And probably the biggest guidance around that is no longer will we have the everyone share the same crayon box or marker box type. So if you were to make an investment right now, if at the elementary, I would probably suggest kind of your little pencil box with your own individual pens and pencils and markers and so on. We'll get a lot of guidance from our teachers on what this will look like. But I guess on the other side, I'm saying don't go out and buy 7 binders and 12 peachy folder. Oh, kids don't know what peachy folders are anymore. Sorry, that's dating myself. Unless you want to have all those things eventually to come back to school. But we also will have information on how you can check out that laptop or device. We have an updated food service program that will be revealing in the next week as well as updating our bus stop information. There are rules on the bus as well as far as social distancing and so on, but we feel earlier in the summer we didn't know if we'd be able to provide bus service to everyone as we have, but at this point in the summer we feel we do. I know one of the big elephants in the room, and this has been a point of consternation for everyone, and that's mask wearing. So at school, kids and staff will be required to wear masks. The school will provide the masks if you don't have one. We know there's going to be a lot of issues around developmentally, around what you do with your mask, what you don't do with your mask, what if I blow my nose? Well, all of those things, this is all new territory. Please recognize that we don't want to have a student be in a mask for all 6 hours a day at school. There would be breaks there when they're outside. There would be times when you're not having to wear the mask, but generally speaking, the mask is required while you're at school. And I know some families have made their decision to go online based on that one condition, and unfortunately that is the condition that is currently in place. If there is relief in that, then I'd be happy to recycle the 3,000 masks we have already purchased. How about the next slide, please? I think we're getting close to the end.
So when are the parents and students going to get the training for the distance learning tools and programs? I'm typing in the training materials will be provided as we produce them. They'll be out prior to September 14th.
Yes, so the second week, the week of October 8th is the week where the teachers will have had their training, and we will determine September 8th, we will determine during that time when the parents and students will get their training, whether it's the first week of school of the week of the 14th or earlier. We have some community partners at the library are helping us develop some tutoring videos on how to use certain tools. If you want to get ahead of the game a little bit, I would say invest your time in Microsoft 365. Specifically at the Teams, Microsoft Teams. That will be the main way that kids receive instruction. The masks are required for ages 5 and up. Kristen. Okay. This might be close to the end of the slide. Yeah, it is. Okay, so my 30 minutes stretched to 45, but that's okay because it was all good stuff, or depending on your perspective. Okay, ready for questions in general. Let's take this. Yeah, so the slideshow, the slide deck will be posted on the district website. That's ccsd.k12.org.us. I'll post it after tonight's meeting so you'll have access to it. On the right-hand side across the top, it'll say Ready School, Safe Learners, and that's where all of our meeting notes and the slide deck and all future information will be there.
So we had a question from Aaron with regards to the live meetings. Will those be pre-recorded for those with network challenges?
Yes.
We will be recording them. Will we observe distancing in the cafeteria to allow masks to be removed for eating safely?
That's yes, I would say yes. Yes. So yes, the distancing that we would establish in the cafeterias, places where kids could sit. So rather than being buddy, elbow, we would socially distance them in those eating areas.
So how will attendance work if kids are unable to log on at the directed time?
You bet. So the rules around attendance have also been upgraded. And in the future guidance, we will define what that is. But in essence, if a student cannot attend live, the requirement for attendance can also be met by an email to the teacher, or probably an email is probably going to be the best. I was going to say text message, but more often than not, there'll be an email. It could also be potentially some of our instructional assistants may be assigned to monitor some of that attendance areas of concern, but primarily if you're not live, then we will have some type of a communication. Hey, sorry, I couldn't meet class today. I'll make it up tomorrow. Something along those lines. And then of course we'll monitor that to see if there are other barriers that are in the way of kids being able to attend on a regular basis.
So Melissa, you asked, I answered you in chat, but I think it got buried. Can kids continue with online throughout the year instead of going back November 2nd? If you're interested in continuing with online throughout the year, email Mr. Wilson, and I posted his email address. That's probably your best bet for now. We do have some families planning on not returning.
So I'm going to expand on that. So in our recent survey results, we have about 25% of our school population is opting to go online for the whole year. So let me talk about that just a little bit. Because it can get very easily confused when we start talking online versus distance learning. So I'll do my best here to clarify. So distance learning is where we are now, and we're providing those lessons online, okay? And with the intent that distance learning is temporary, and with the idea that this is a group of folks who want to return to school on campus as soon as available. If you want the online option, you are going to be working with a contracted service that we have, and your instruction will be similar but different than what's getting taught during the regular school day. It'll be more independent. There will be regular check-in by someone from school to see how things are going. In essence, if you're choosing the online option now, you're choosing it for the whole year. Okay. However, we would possibly consider changes throughout the year at a logical place, like at the semester. So as an example, if you were started online and you got to December and say, hey, this isn't my thing, then in January when the new semester started, then we would enroll you back at school.
So Mark Stender asked, will each kid have their own online time consecutively, or will it be scattered? I can give an example from the high school.
Go ahead.
The current online distance schedule that I'm working with would have essentially their the same 7 periods they would normally have throughout the day broken up into 2 days. And so 8 o'clock or 8:20 to 8:55 approximately would be first period. So that's when their first period class would meet. That would be when they would be expected to be online. We'll take attendance in those classes virtually. If there are extenuating circumstances that they cannot get on at that time, we would make accommodations for that and things like that. But they will be consecutive as much as possible, and they will be consistent.
I think what Mark might be asking is if
we're not going to have a 6 o'clock class for one person, and then a 2, and then a 8, and then it should be a block of time.
Yeah, I guess Mark, maybe was your question more about you have one device and you have 2 high school kids trying to access live learning at the same time? Was that your question? I'm sorry, you're muted. You can't answer. All right.
Mark, we'll come. I'll come back. I'll look for your response there in the chat.
Some other questions. All
So
right, actually, let's take the mutes off.
Okay, we can take the mute.
We're unmuting everybody right now.
Just a second. All right, you can now unmute yourself.
So maybe raise your hand with a wave. We have about 45 people in the room, so we'll go back and forth between the 2 screens to see if we have a waving question. Or if you're a Zoom Pro by now, down in the participant, there's a place where you can raise your hand.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, it can. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's Ivan.
Hi, Ivan.
Hey. I just sent it, I typed it in, but since you unmuted me, I'm gonna just ask it. When and how are parents gonna be able to apply to, like, let's say, to get a device or whatever to help them out? When is that time frame gonna be available?
You bet. So school starts September
Right.
14th. We would hope that you would have devices the first week of September. So if there's any trainings involved, so that'll be part of your registration packet that you'll get from Riley Creek that will explain kind of the conditions of loaning a device, your signing off for responsibility, and all of those types of things. But I would anticipate the first week of September would be when we would start handing out those devices.
And if a parent or a student is struggling with the schoolwork and whatever, is Ms. Dorn going to be available to like maybe help that? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. She will be monitoring both of our special educators, speech therapy. If your kids are getting speech, your speech therapist will be in contact with you to set up those regular times. And absolutely, this is a two-way thing. If you're not feeling that you're getting enough support, again, I shared from the spring that we had some families that were concerned that they were getting too many phone calls, and then others weren't getting any at all. So we're trying to strike that balance. Our teachers had the expectation to be in contact with you on a regular basis, but please reach out anytime.
Yeah, my kid actually did really good this last time around. I'm just saying if the option was going to be there available if something happened and he needed extra help, that's all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
That's very good. Genevieve, welcome. How can I help you? Genevieve, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. So I was wondering what like platform the kids will be. Will it be Microsoft or Google or? It
will be Microsoft.
Okay.
And then the platform specifically for K-5 is called MobiMax. And so if you want to do a little research on MobiMax, that is, again, a curriculum platform, but it's also a place where all of our teachers, even though there are some of these specific platforms that have lessons and activities included, they will also be customizing their lessons using their own things in addition to those platforms.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So quickly addressing one or two of the I hate to say easy questions, but easy questions in chat. So yes, all parents and all teachers and volunteers will wear masks until it is no longer an executive order that public buildings are requiring that. That would include parents dropping off kids at preschool as they enter a public building. So Kristen, I'm gonna go, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I think you asked both of those questions. You may have just been asking the same follow-up, but that's okay.
But in a more general sense, there will be, and I hope this doesn't sound disinviting, but we will be limiting the number of people in the building in the day. And so volunteers in the traditional sense will look different. Your volunteer work might be outside of the classroom, but that idea of coming in and helping your kids, not probably going to happen as much this year.
Can I ask another question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the other question I had is, remember how you said that all of the pencil boxes and whatnot are all there, you know, every kid has their own?
Sure.
So I have some, obviously mine isn't quite like that. So I would have to make something like that occur in the preschool.
Yeah,
correct?
And that's correct. And in any more specific questions like that, I'll refer you to Mr. Denning. But
okay.
you're on the right track as far as I think you would want to model that you have the same requirements as our other teachers do as far as again, just minimizing the number of touches a certain piece of info, a book or a pencil or something along those lines has.
Okay. Thank you.
So another quick and easy one to answer I can take. Rosalie asked, are seniors required to do state testing this year? If so, what will that look like? Rosalie, the current guidance that we've received is that this year's seniors were exempted from state testing as of last year, and that has not changed. Therefore, the seniors will not have state testing as part of a graduation requirement this year or a senior project.
And this year's juniors will also be exempt from state testing.
Mm-hmm.
As far as state testing for everyone else, of course, a lot of that depends on how our school year evolves. It may not end up that everyone takes the Smarter Balance test in the spring, but there will be some other forms of assessment that teachers use throughout the year, possibly in place of the state testing. Again, it really depends on when we can return to school as a state on how that state testing rolls out.
So Brian, you had a question about, do we have an estimate on when info will be available about childcare being provided by community partners? Those are being done by community partners.
Yeah, it's ongoing. I will keep people as updated as quickly as I can. I'm probably going to have a weekly update that certainly with staff, but I know this would be important as well for other families as resources are made available. Tina, was that a hand up or? Unmute, please. There you go.
I'm trying.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I know you said this, but I missed it. For those that are opting to do all online through our online program,
Yes.
are they committed to that? I know you answered that. Or can they change at any time?
To be determined about the
Okay.
anytime. We're looking at natural breaks,
Okay.
like the quarter or the semester.
Okay.
Because I know from previous experience, I think around the online, it's important that people don't think of what we did last school, the distance learning for all we did last spring, as being what online learning looks like.
Right.
If you're so as people experience the other platforms, they may find out this isn't for my kid, and that's totally okay. And I would rather, obviously we would accept those students back. I think we just need to work with staff and with the principals on when the least disruptive is. But I also think it'd be fair to say is once someone has started in online and then come back to school and then wants to go back to online, we would say no.
Okay.
So I answered this question privately. This was another high school specific question from Rosalie. However, I thought we do have a couple of high school parents in the group. They asked where or how will this year's seniors get help when it comes to college applications and such. I wrote back that Ms. Lemke will be available anytime throughout the day via office hours. She'd be your primary contact, but that we'll be working with Michelle Fritch and Belle Cohen as the year continues to have them work with seniors in some format, regardless of whether we're in the building or not.
Yeah, so the Aspire program will continue. Actually, our plans for our counselors, Mr. Funk and our new elementary principal, as well as Ms. Lemke at the high school, those afternoons will be some classes, specifically in career exploration, maybe some socially emotional learning, other activities that may not be academically, but they are certainly worthy of the other things of school that you would normally do during the school day.
So we have the question, when kids do go back, will it be full days? That would be working in partnership with the health authority to determine the best outcome.
So yeah, Melissa, specifically right now, I would say, as Mr. Metzger said, it could be full days or it could be half days, depending on how many kids we bring back to school at one time and the size of the cohort.
And what the current guidance is, because if they come out and say, hey, you're good to go, that would look different than if we're working with the current materials.
Yeah.
How will libraries be adjusting?
The library, those are again similar to what our Curry Public Library has modeled, in the sense that there will be new procedures in place by Ms. Hawkins and Mr. Clark as far as I foresee, rather than students going through the stacks of looking for materials, that probably a cart of selections will be brought to them. But again, those kind of logistical things we'll leave to the experts, but definitely each time a kid touches a book, it'll be cleaned before it goes back on the shelf or another kid shows an interest in it.
Can I expand on that?
Sure, go ahead, Darby.
So what about our classroom libraries, since many of us teachers have private collections within the rooms?
So we will help. I will defer to Ms. Hawkins, to Sally, to help devise those protocols around cleaning. those private collections in your rooms.
Mark asked, Mark, just to clarify, contact point for questions regarding,
Primarily the principals.
yeah,
I would say.
it's mostly gonna be the principals, unless you're talking about specific schoolwork, then it's gonna be the teacher. If you have more of a question about like, hey, when are we going back? That's a question for either the principal or the superintendent. You know, how's our county doing? Are we getting close? We'll be monitoring that stuff, if that's what you mean.
No, it's just more things like, you know, when I've got a senior, so how are we going to handle the scholarship part? You know, how do we know if they decide to change their mind on requiring the state test or something like that? Because
we'll put out anything like that. Your best bets are going to be the school's website and social media pages. That's where we'll put out information the fastest, probably.
Okay.
We'll be updating those really frequently. But if you have a specific question, never feel bad about calling. I'll be at my desk, you know, waiting for phone calls. So
you might be doing a bit more than that, but
I got more than that. But at least for a while, that's going to be the main gig, I think.
yeah.
Margie House, I'm going to ask you to just quickly, if you wouldn't mind. Margie was one of our community task force partners, and she's put in a link. Could you explain to the audience what's in that link?
Sure. It's a document that's been updated several times this summer since the end of the school year. But that is the guidelines that the task force utilized to come up with some decisions for what we'll do for the school year. And so if you've got some direct questions with regards to why decisions were made the way they were, or I don't know, it's just a little light reading before bedtime.
There you go.
It's
only about 80 pages, folks, so.
Sure. No,
don't print it. Yeah.
Written for insomniacs who don't respond to strong drugs.
It really just goes to show you that, you know, the rules are set before us, and that the folks that came together and the administration that you have that makes the decisions in the best interest of your children really is sort of beholden to the rules of the state, and does have the safety and the health and well-being of your children at the heart of everything. So I wanted to make sure you all had that, and you can take a look at it. A lot of those specific questions don't necessarily get answered in this document, but they kind of give you a reasoning behind where the decisions are made.
Very good. Kristen, you have a question. Kristen Mayer, come on down. Yep, she.
Okay. Any other questions?
Danielle.
Hi. I'm not sure if this is a question for now or for later, but a couple of us were talking, are we going to have to be at the school through the whole distance learning thing, or are we allowed to like work from home?
So that's to be determined.
Okay.
So I will answer it this way. Optimally, we'd like to see you at school because it has all of your materials, the high-speed internet, phone, all of those types of things. But we recognize that there are reasons why people would need to be at home, specifically high-risk health, potentially childcare issues, some of those types of things. So those are things that as a staff will be working on in the next week with our association partners.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay.
That's about it right now.
Okay, so next steps for you again is each school is required to make public what's called the operational blueprint. That's due to the state on Monday. It will be posted on our website. So as Margie was referring to, all of the ifs, hows, wheres around protocols and what happens if someone gets sick at school or a staff member gets sick at school, or how far apart somebody is, or all of those things will be in that blueprint. If we change our model from distance learning to on-site, that's another different blueprint. So there will always be plenty of information. It can be a bit overwhelming. So rather than try to find the answer, please don't hesitate to reach out and do this, to ask us those questions. And
I'm gonna, Kristen, you were back, it sounded like a second ago. Are you available now with the question? Nope. Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
Darby?
Okay. As far as the link goes regarding what Margie posted, should we copy and paste that into the web in case the chat isn't available after this call?
Yes.
Either that or OD's website. If you just go to Ready School Safe
yeah.
Learners, it'll.
I'll post it tonight on the district website as well. I also noticed as we were looking through, we have a couple other new staff members that have just joined us this summer. Mary Caravilla is our new 5th grade teacher, and she's just joined us. Mr. Cronley, our new Spanish teacher from moving from Idaho, is in the house. Let's see. I was thinking I was looking for other. That might be it on our new staff members. So, and again, welcome to our new families who are just moving to Riley Creek, as well as those who are moving on from the many years before and after. So with that, you've heard enough of us. It's been a wonderful evening. It's honestly kind of a little bit of a relief to have this announcement made. But just know that we're continuing to work to get our kids back to school as quickly as possible is our #1 motivation, in a health and safety way for kids and for staff. And I thank you for your patience and your grace, and look forward to a great school year. 2020 is going to have a kind of a weird feel for it. Let's hope that 21 brings in a greater celebration. So thanks again. Good night, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.